it's Lynn, and today I'm coming at you with a book review for Little Lazarus by Michael Bible, a novella published in 2025 by Clash Books. And I'll be upfront, this one is a bit of a head scratcher in the best and most frustrating way possible. So let's begin. The story is set in Harmony, North Carolina, a small southern town where the setting itself feels like a character. Oppressive, suffocating, achingly beautiful, and absolutely, completely aware of it. We follow two teenagers, Francois and Eleanor, who are lonely and restless and find each other the way people with nowhere else to go tend to do. They are not so much in love as they are each other's only logical conclusion. One drunken night, in a Jeep, hurtling down a country road, something happens that sends the rest of the story unraveling in several directions all at once. But the teenagers are only half the story. The other half belongs to two tortoises, Lazarus, an ancient, apparently clairvoyant creature kept by a wandering businessman in a business suit, nicknamed Seersucker, and Little Lazarus, a tortoise Eleanor finds in a New York City restaurant hallway and is named after the original. Together, they traverse continents and centuries, passing between caretakers that range from a billionaire obsessed with immortality to a line of mute men sharing the same seersucker suit across generations, all the way to a dog named Pony at the end of the world. It is exactly as cosmically unhinged as it sounds. The whole thing is told through an omniscient narrator who is, as it turns out, not entirely reliable. And the scope stretches from what seems like nearly 2 million years ago to some scorched, distant future. And the book is barely 100 pages long, which is either remarkably impressive or a recipe for whiplash, depending on your tolerance for that kind of narrative acrobatics. So let's talk about what worked. First and most immediately, this book is short, and I mean that as a genuine compliment. There's something almost radical about a book that commits to saying what it needs to say and then stops. Little Lazarus clocks in around 100 pages and never feels like it's padding time. The prose is lyrical and fluid enough that even the most disorienting structural jumps carry you through without losing very much momentum. You don't feel the machinery, you just feel the motion. And the tortoise narrator device is genuinely inventive. Lazarus and Little Lazarus are ancient, observant, clairvoyant, and yet they cannot intervene in anything they witness. The result is an omniscient narrator who is also paradoxically unreliable, not necessarily because they're lying, but because they are watching everything from a vantage point that is fundamentally not human. They can only blink and know. There's something quietly devastating about that, and it's one of the more original narrative conceits I've encountered in a literary fiction novel or novella in a while. The characters are also very compelling, especially when they're at their most flawed. Francois and Eleanor aren't particularly likable in the conventional sense, but they feel real. They feel trapped, impulsive, reaching for something just out of frame. Eleanor's voice carries a raw, unfiltered quality that gives the book its emotional spine. And the supporting cast, the immortality-obsessed billionaire, the recurring seersucker men, the therapist, Dr. Holland, are all sketched with just enough specificity to feel inhabited without really overstaying their welcome. And then there's a third act, which goes somewhere genuinely yet wonderfully strange. End of the world strange, a scorched island type of strange. Eleanor's fate left deliberately ambiguous, and Little Lazarus, the last living thing, is left alone in the wreckage. And I don't want to say more, but it's the kind of ending that commits so fully to its own weirdness that it earns it. All I can really say is that Little Lazarus, this little teeny tiny thing, is never boring. But, and you knew there was a but coming, the timeline is genuinely confusing. The narrative moves across what they say millions of years without much navigational signage, and there's a difference between purposeful ambiguity and whiplash that makes you feel like you accidentally skipped a chapter. This book occasionally tips into the latter, pulling you out of the emotional current at exactly the wrong moments. The unreliable narrator conceit, as brilliant as it is in concept, also becomes a practical problem. When the narrator is supposedly a clairvoyant tortoise who is emotionally detached and temporarily unmoored, the question of what actually happened becomes genuinely unanswerable. And not in the intriguing way, more in the wait a minute, was that like a vision or a metaphor, or was that from a century ago kind of way? I finished the book with fewer answers than I started with, and that left me feeling more confused than moved. And that feeds into my biggest issue. Little Lazarus is, at its core, a vibes book. And I'm usually fine with that. I love a plot light, atmospheric read when I'm emotionally invested, but I felt like I was watching everything from a distance the entire time. I could admire the construction, appreciate the ambition, not at the prose. I just never really truly felt connected to anything. And without that emotional tether, the cosmic scope started to feel less like being profound and more like a mood. Beautiful mood, certainly, but beauty without connection can only take you so far. Little Lazarus is a genuinely ambitious novella that does things with perspective and time that most writers would never attempt. Michael Bible is a singular voice, lyrical, strange, brave. This book has the bones of something extraordinary. This book feels extraordinary, and yet the emotional distance kept me from fully surrendering to it. I was an observer where I wanted to be a participant. It's the kind of book I can respect deeply and still hold at arm's length, which is a strange, slightly melancholy place to land after finishing a story about clairvoyant tortoises and the long, beautiful, terrible arc of human suffering. And so with that said, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Which brings me to you. Have you read it, or do you plan to? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. You are awesome. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!